Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at Morphy's with an Uzi. Well, actually with two Uzis, because Uzis are really cool. Uzis have always been very popular as NFA machine guns. However, not a whole lot of Uzis were actually brought into the US as factory machine guns. In fact, the importation of foreign-made factory machine guns was essentially prohibited in 1968. However, that left the option to convert, well, you could manufacture a machine gun in the United States until 1986, which means you could take a semi-auto and manufacture it into a machine gun. So a lot of people who wanted an Uzi thought, why don't I just go get myself one of those Action Arms semi-auto Uzis and convert it to full auto and register it. We'll file a Form 1, register it as a machine gun, and then I'll have a super cool, fun Uzi to go out and shoot. And this got done in relatively large numbers. Uzis are a relatively common full auto transferable machine gun today because of this. But there are two different primary ways in which people would get their Uzi into full auto. So there are a few oddballs that we're not going to cover here today. The two main methods were registered receiver and registered bolt guns. So today we're going to take a look at what the difference is, and if you are going to go get yourself a full auto Uzi, which one do you want and what do you need to look for when inspecting them? Let me start off just by getting the disappointment out of the way for a few folks. This is not going to be a video tutorial on how to convert an Uzi to full auto. This is going to be a video about understanding the two main legal ways in which Uzis were converted to full auto and registered as such. So the core of the issue is that in order to come in as a semi-auto, legal semi-auto firearm, there are a couple things that basically had to happen. The design had to be modified so that you couldn't just drop original full auto parts onto a semi-auto receiver and have it become a machine gun. That's essentially ATF standard. Now, what that involves for every particular firearms design changes depending on the different firearms design. So the primary thing for the Uzi, by the way, there are some changes to the fire control group that are involved in an Uzi conversion, and we're not going to be touching on any of them today because they're basically all the same for all the different conversion methods. All right, let's go ahead and pull the bolt out. So to be a legal semi-auto when these were imported, they were made into closed bolt guns, which meant the bolt had to be modified to add a striker sort of element to it. And then, of course, to satisfy ATF, it can't be possible to just drop in one of these, an original full auto military Uzi bolt with a fixed firing pin right there. So the standard for the Uzi is the installation of a receiver block. This bar on the inside of the receiver will very effectively prevent me from installing a regular bolt. All right, so the way this worked before '86 was you could pick a part that you wanted to serialize and register. You can see this has been serialized. In this case, this is a registered full auto bolt. The part that you register as a machine gun, essentially you can change anything on. You can basically ignore the law about machine gun parts because you're registering this thing as a machine gun. So of course it's going to have machine gun elements. So if our primary problem here is the bolt interacting with this blocking bar, well, we can cut a slot in the bolt or we can get rid of the blocking bar. If we cut a slot in the bolt, we are creating essentially a machine gun bolt. And in that case, this has to be registered because otherwise this is considered a machine gun by itself because you can drop it into a semi-auto Uzi and have it run because of that slot in it. So the alternative is take your receiver and remove the blocking bar from it. Again, either one of these operations is illegal to do if the gun or if the part in question is not registered as a machine gun. There's no reason to do both, so you need to pick which one, and if you're in the market for a transferable Uzi, you will find examples of both of these systems. So let's take a look at the pros and cons of each. In general, registered bolt conversions were done because it was pretty easy. You just had to cut a slot in the bolt, which was simpler than going in and messing with the receiver itself. There are a couple things to watch out for. These are typically done on hardened, I mean, this is an original machine gun receiver. It's going to be hardened from the factory, and in order to cut it, you probably want to anneal it to soften it, then do the cutting, and then it does need to be properly heat treated afterwards, or else you'll have problems. Reputable companies did do that, but you know, anyone could register a machine gun like this before '86. So just pay attention to the condition of the bolt if you're getting something like this. Now, the other option, and what is almost universally considered the better option, is the registered receiver, where instead of messing around with making a semi-auto bolt compliant, instead you just register the receiver as a machine gun, which means now you can basically do whatever you want to it. You then get rid of that block, and then you can just get a bolt, an original full auto bolt from a parts kit, and use it. This has a couple of added benefits. One of them is you can actually use caliber conversion kits pretty easily. The Uzi can also be had in 45 ACP and 22 rimfire, in addition to 9mm parabellum. If you have a registered bolt, like that guy, that you can't really change calibers on. But if it's a registered receiver, well, the receivers were all the same, and so you can get a set of caliber conversion parts, and they'll drop right into the gun. The registered receiver is also seen as a better option because it's just generally closer to the condition of the original factory design. You don't have any extra cuts in the bolt or in other components. You're returning the gun to its original intended design instead of trying to work around semi-auto restrictions to make the gun full auto. Now, one of the other elements that I do want to talk about, there are a couple of things, like we're not going to go into the grip frame modifications, but when it comes to barrels, the other thing to be aware of is Action Arms and IMI, when they imported these guns, decided, and I don't know if this was done with ATF encouragement or if they were just trying to preempt any issues, they wanted to prevent people from being able to put short-barreled, like standard 10-inch Uzi barrels into their semi-auto guns. This was before the days when you would import a short-barreled rifle as a pistol by not having a stock. Instead, these guns were imported with 16-inch barrels and either fixed wood or folding metal stocks. So while not strictly, I think, legally required, they decided to make it difficult, or well, impossible, to use standard 10-inch Uzi barrels that would turn the semi-auto gun into an SBR. And the way they did that was by adding this hood over the back end of the barrel, and by having this, the hole in the main trunnion, slightly smaller in diameter. So by making this hole smaller in diameter, you couldn't insert a standard Uzi machine gun barrel, and you had to have the end of the barrel necked down slightly like this to fit into that restrictor hood. Now, if you have a registered receiver full auto, there is absolutely nothing preventing you from milling that hood off and opening the trunnion up so that you can, in fact, use standard Uzi submachine gun barrels, and a lot of people prefer that. It gives you a better supply of spare parts, and it's just, again, better. It's closer to the original design of the gun. Now, if you have a registered bolt gun, like this guy, legally speaking, you can still make those modifications. They are not actually, at time of recording, considered illegal, although I think they're kind of frowned on a bit, but not actually illegal. So if you want to do it, talk to your lawyer and then go ahead. But if you have a registered receiver gun, you can basically do anything to it that you want, anything you want to the receiver. So fixing this back to original factory spec is no big deal. It's all Uzis now, nothing but Uzis. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something here today about the different conversion methods that were out there. Big thanks to Morphe's, who has, as you can see, a significant selection of Uzis, which allowed me the chance to pull a registered receiver and a registered bolt one to show you the details. Thanks for watching.